Most people think stress ends when the workday ends, but that is rarely what happens. For a lot of people, night has become the most overstimulating part of the day. The body is tired, but the mind is still lit up. You finish dinner, sit down for a moment, pick up your phone, answer one last message, watch one more video, and somehow your nervous system never gets the signal that the day is actually over. You go to bed exhausted, but not calm. Sleep comes late, or it comes lightly, and the next morning you wake up already feeling behind. This is where cortisol becomes part of the story. Cortisol is often described as the stress hormone, but that description is incomplete. It is not the enemy. In the right rhythm, cortisol helps you wake up, focus, and respond to demands. The problem is not cortisol itself. The problem is timing. When cortisol stays elevated too late into the night, the body acts like it is still on duty. Heart rate stays a little higher. Thoughts stay more active. Recovery gets delayed, and over time, that creates a quiet kind of exhaustion that people often mistake for laziness, low motivation, or a lack of discipline. But in many Japanese habit systems, discipline is not treated like an emotional performance. It is treated like an environment, a structure, a sequence, something you design so the right action becomes easier at the right time. That matters at night more than most people realize, because your nights are not just the end of the day. They are the setup for the next one, and when the evening is chaotic, the morning usually pays for it. So instead of trying to force yourself to become better at relaxing, it helps to think smaller. Think in rituals. Think in transitions. Think in tiny cues that tell the body the demanding part of the day is over now. That is the quiet power behind Kaizen. Small improvements, low resistance, repeated consistently. Not dramatic, effective. Tonight, we are going through 5 Japanese-inspired night habits that can help quiet cortisol fast, supported by behavioral psychology and simple physiology. Not extreme routines, not biohacking theater, just small practices that lower stimulation, reduce friction, and help your system return to baseline. The first habit is what I would call a deliberate closing ritual. One reason cortisol stays high at night is that the brain hates open loops. In psychology, unfinished tasks tend to hold attention longer than completed ones. Even when you are no longer working, your mind keeps scanning what is unresolved. The email you forgot to send, the conversation you need to have, the decision you still have not made. These loose ends create cognitive tension, and that tension keeps the mind subtly alert. Most people respond by doing nothing structured at all. They drift into the evening while still mentally carrying the day. But a better approach is to create a 5-minute closing sequence that tells the brain nothing else needs to be solved tonight. This can be very simple. Write down 3 things you've finished. Then write down the first task for tomorrow. Then put away the tools of the day. Close the laptop. Clear the desk. Turn off the main light. That sequence matters because the brain responds strongly to visible endings. A completed ritual reduces ambiguity. It lowers decision load. It also cuts the tendency to mentally rehearse tomorrow before bed. In many disciplined lifestyles, order is not about perfection, it is about recovery. A small act of closure creates psychological distance between effort and rest. And when that distance becomes habitual, the body starts learning the pattern. Work ends here. Recovery begins here. That is habit 1. Habit 2 is lowering stimulation through what the Japanese often value deeply in design simplicity without excess. At night, most people do the opposite. They seek comfort through stimulation. Bright screens, fast entertainment, multiple tabs open, snacks, scrolling background noise messages, and endless novelty. It feels like decompression, but biologically, it often acts like continued activation, especially when the content is emotionally charged, unpredictable, or fast-paced. Your brain is highly sensitive to novelty because novelty can signal reward. That means late-night scrolling keeps dopamine active. And when dopamine stays elevated through constant micro-rewards, the nervous system stays engaged. Then cortisol follows that state of alertness instead of settling down. The goal is not to make your night boring. The goal is to remove unnecessary intensity. So create what we could call a low-information zone for the last hour before sleep. Dim the lights. Reduce screen brightness if you still need a device. Shift from reactive input to predictable input. That could mean reading a physical book, listening to calm audio stretching, tidying a small area, or preparing tea. The key is not the specific activity. The key is the drop in cognitive intensity. This matters because circadian rhythm depends not just on darkness, but on consistency of cues. The body needs contrast. Day should feel like engagement. Night should feel like reduction. When both feel equally stimulating, the internal clock gets blurred. A useful practical step here is the rule of one channel. In the final hour of the night, choose one form of input only. Not TV plus phone, not music plus email, not video plus messaging. One channel, one pace. This lowers sensory load more than people expect, and that matters because the nervous system does not calm down only when you stop moving. It calms down when you stop being interrupted. The third habit is warm water timing, not a dramatic cold plunge, not a complicated recovery protocol, just a warm shower or bath about 60 to 90 minutes before bed. This works for a surprisingly simple reason. To sleep well, the body needs a drop in core temperature. Warm water seems like it would do the opposite, but after you step out, the body releases heat more efficiently, helping temperature fall afterward. That drop can support sleep onset and signal to the brain that nighttime physiology is beginning. Just as important warm water changes state, it creates a physical boundary between the outside world and the private space of rest. In behavioral terms, it becomes an anchor habit, one action that reliably leads into the next. And anchor habits are powerful because they reduce negotiation. You do not ask yourself whether you are ready to wind down. You begin the sequence, and the sequence does the work. This is where many people misunderstand discipline. They think disciplined people have stronger willpower at night. Often they do not. They simply have fewer choices to make. The routine removes debate before fatigue can take over. So this habit can be very small. A 10-minute warm shower, soft light afterward, fresh clothes, no returning to work once it is done. That last part matters. If you shower, then go back to emails. You break the association. The ritual loses its signal value. Protect the sequence. The fourth habit is one of the most overlooked, reducing emotional carryover before sleep. A lot of night stress is not task stress. It is unprocessed emotional residue, frustration from a conversation, quiet resentment, social comparison, small disappointments that never got named so they stayed active in the background. The body often experiences unresolved emotion as continued vigilance. Even when your schedule is technically over, your system is still bracing. This is why a short reflective practice can reduce cortisol more effectively than passive distraction. Not deep journaling for an hour, not overanalyzing your life, just 2 or 3 lines that create emotional clarity. What drained me today? What can wait until tomorrow? What do I want tonight to feel like? Simple questions, clear edges. The point is to move vague tension into language. When the brain labels an internal state, that state often becomes less chaotic. In psychology, this is sometimes called affect labeling. Naming what you feel can reduce the intensity of the reaction because the brain shifts from raw emotional processing toward more organized interpretation. In plain terms, what is named becomes easier to settle. This is especially useful for people who seem physically tired but mentally sharp at night. Very often, they are not dealing with excess energy. They are dealing with unresolved activation. A practical version of this habit is to keep a small notebook beside where you charge your phone. Before bed, write only 3 sentences, no more. Limiting the space matters because it prevents reflection from turning into rumination. The goal is release, not analysis. And then we come to the 5th habit, which may be the most powerful, because it shapes all the others, preparing the morning before the night ends. This sounds unrelated to cortisol, but it is deeply connected. One reason the body stays tense at night is anticipatory stress. The brain is already rehearsing the next day because tomorrow feels disorganized. Clothing is not ready. Breakfast is unclear. The first hour is uncertain. So even in bed, the mind stays in planning mode. When you reduce morning friction, you reduce nighttime vigilance. This is a very Kaizen-style move. Small preparation, large downstream effect. Lay out tomorrow's clothes. Put water near where you will need it. Decide the first action of the morning, not your whole plan, just the first move. That could be stepping outside for light-making tea, writing one priority, or taking a short walk. Why does this help? Because the brain relaxes when the next step is known. Ambiguity creates stress. Clarity lowers it. And over time, these small night habits do something bigger than improve sleep. They change your identity around discipline. You stop seeing discipline as forcing yourself through resistance. You start seeing it as designing calm transitions that make good behavior more natural. That is a much more sustainable kind of strength, because real consistency is rarely built through intensity. It is built through repeatable cues, through environments that support recovery, through rituals that ask very little in the moment but give a lot back over time. So if your nights have felt restless, heavy, or mentally loud, do not try to overhaul everything at once. Pick one habit, just one, a 5-minute closing ritual, a lower stimulation final hour, a warm shower at the right time, 3 lines in a notebook, preparing the first step of tomorrow, small actions, done repeatedly. That is where the shift begins, not in a burst of motivation, in a quieter system. And when your system becomes quieter, discipline stops feeling harsh. It starts feeling stable. You sleep with less friction. You wake with less resistance. And day by day, your life becomes easier to carry, not because you became someone else, but because your habits finally started working with your biology instead of against it. That is the deeper lesson. A better life is often not built by adding more force. It is built by ending the day well.